I mean, I'll say that dude over there, Coach Minner and Coach Klingsell, they make amazing adjustments, and just all the other coaches under them make amazing adjustments as well. And we just lock into what we have to do and realize that the whole first half they've given us everything they got, and we have been messing up. So we just fix what we need to fix, and we just go out there and just attack with energy unknown to mankind.
Hello, everybody. Welcome in on this Thursday, the Maize and Blue Reviews. Good afternoon, Michigan football. All right, there was Michigan defensive lineman Mike Morris talking about Michigan and their halftime adjustments this year. And if you've been following Michigan football, you know that that's part of their story this year. They've been great coming out in the second half, not just on defense, but on offense as well. We're pleased to bring in part of the Maize and Blue Review, Lucas Reimink. You may be familiar with his work in a variety of ways, sharpening the edge during the year on Fridays where we pick games. We're going to do that. Spoiler coming up. And also for those of you that are subscribers, hopefully all of you, if you're not, you will. We'll tell you how to do that coming up as well. But the very popular feature of the Chalk Talk, which Lucas runs, which is very informative, educational, entertaining. I mean, all those things. Lucas, how you doing?
Doing well, yeah. The next one I'm working on is Jair Hill. I got started to get into the film earlier this week. It's not quite done yet, but that'll be out hopefully in the next day or two. So that was a fun one to do. I'm excited for people to talk about him. He's a big addition on signing day there. So
does he remind you at all of Will Johnson, Sauce Gardner? You know, kind of a hybrid of those guys.
There are some similarities there in terms of like the ball skills. I think, you know, obviously Will Johnson had a great freshman season. I think they're kind of different in how they go about playing the cornerback position. Jair is more of like a speed-based guy, can flip his hips, turn and run. Will's a little bit bigger, more physical. So they do things differently, but they're both very high caliber players. Excited to just watch both of them hopefully suit up for a couple years for the Maize and Blue. So it'll be a good tandem duo down the line.
Yeah, I could, you know, I'm picturing it. It's the first time that I'd ever have pictured Will Johnson over there on one side and Jair Hill on the other. So yeah, all right. I look forward to doing that. We got a lot. It's happening. I mean, here we are. We've been sitting around and waiting and biding our time. I was telling everybody to be patient, and then yesterday I'm like, I don't have any patience. I'm ready, and you know, here we are, and it is going down. So it's as exciting as it could get, Lucas. I just want to let everybody know what we are specifically talking about. And for that, I've got a menu, and we will get to three keys. And we ask you, all of you folks out there that are watching or listening to this live, and you have an idea about a key to the game coming up on Saturday, go ahead. Or if you have a question, you have a comment, you can put those up. We'll consider them. We'll put it up on the screen and we'll read it and we will talk about it. But if you have some keys to beating TCU, we could probably come up with 20, but we've narrowed it down to 3 keys. You don't have to put 3. You just want to put one up there. You can. We will, as mentioned, pick the bowl games. We picked a bunch of them a couple weeks ago, and we've got 16 left. That includes Michigan and TCU. So we've got that coming up. Well, we will start with the latest news from the Fiesta Bowl in Tempe, Arizona, where Michigan is working out. And you know, Lucas, you saw a little bit. Yeah, they had some reporters that were at the first part of practice this week. So we saw some film as we sit here a little bit after 1:00 on this Thursday. I counted it up. We're about 51 hours away from kickoff. So it's pretty close. I don't know Thursday how much they hit. I know on Fridays generally a walkthrough. So I don't know, maybe a little light practicing today. You have any guesses on what you think they'll be doing today in preparation for Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of right there. At least when I was there working for the team, they kind of do like a shells practice, so shoulder pads, helmet, no football pants. So there's no full on tackle. They kind of wrap up. You know, it is sort of like a glorified walkthrough is kind of what the coaches refer to it as. That's probably what they do today, if I had to guess.
Yeah, like their game plan is in. They know how they want to attack. The things that they're focusing on defensively, whatever their keys or their reminders, those would be the things that they might walk around in today and, just emphasize those again. But I don't think today, like Jesse Minter is going to be like, all right, so we're going to run this different umbrella coverage or something. It's in. They're just the final preparations, to be honest.
Yep, dotting the I's, crossing the T's. That's what Thursday and Friday are for.
There you go. Well, we have, before we get to our keys, we do have some breaking news, and I have a breaking news sounder. And it comes from the world of the Big Ten, and it happened this morning, just a little while ago. Kevin Warren, you're familiar with his work, the commissioner of the Big Ten. He's been at that post for a few years. He took over for Jim Delaney, who was there for 1,000 years. Kevin Warren's been there for a couple of years. He has emerged, according to Pete Thamel from ESPN, as the leader to take over the Chicago Bears as president and CEO. And he's had an in-person interview. And it feels like, just reading that, we just looked at that right before we came on, that if you're Kevin Warren and you interviewed and you're a finalist and you've been in, it sounds like he's getting his job, Lucas.
Yeah, probably. It's hard to speculate without actually knowing, but it sounds like they kind of leak that stuff towards the end of the process typically. So I would guess that he gets that job. And really the only noteworthy thing, well, not the only, but the biggest noteworthy thing that he's done as Big Ten commissioner is he was kind of like the one who spearheaded the whole USC and UCLA, getting them to the Big Ten. That was kind of one of his big projects, one of his big tasks. So, and the TV deal, obviously, was another one. So he had a shorter stint than Jim Delaney, like you mentioned, but he did a lot. There's a lot that happened in the Big Ten over the last couple of years. So
yeah, I would also add in that the pandemic struck there right when he was getting his feet wet, and he had to navigate that. Remember, he canceled the whole season, and then over the next couple of weeks, had to get back in there, and then he would put one schedule out, then he had to put another schedule out, and then it was pretty wild. It was wild for everyone. He navigated it, so he was able to get the Big Ten on the field. And somewhat, if he wouldn't have done that, I think people would not have looked at him the same. But he was able to do that, and I don't know how you give him credit. Like they came up, and they certainly got a good deal. I didn't see anybody saying like, oh, that Big Ten deal, that media deal was came up short. And so he seemed to get pretty good grades everywhere, but he's moving on. So there it is, the breaking news. That gets us to the keys to the game coming up on Saturday. And I'd put my keys from 3, 2, and 1 in importance. And I'm going to let you go first. You can be very specific. You can be very broad in general in these keys that can cover a lot of different things. So I'm interested to see how you organize your 3 keys to the game. Let's hear them.
Sure. So I kind of did the opposite. I went 1, 2, 3 in terms of importance. And then just specifically, mine are all on the defensive side of the ball, because looking at the 3-3-5 structure that TCU likes to run, Michigan's strength being the offensive line, I have a hard time seeing TCU being able to slow down or limit Michigan's running game nearly to the level that they would like to. Just given the structure of the scheme, the players, the size, they just don't have the strength that I don't see it happening to be able to limit Michigan's offensive line. So given that Michigan's offensive line should have a good day running the football, I think the defensive side is kind of the one that I want to focus on here with my 3 keys. And it starts with stopping the run for me. That's always the number one key for Michigan's defense. The way that they structure it, it's a 3-4 structurally, but they play kind of like a 4-3 in terms of their personnel. So it's sort of like an interesting combo of like a more pro style defense with some twists and stuff here and there to make it more suitable for the college game. But it really starts with stopping the run, because they want to put 6 guys in the box and be able to limit the run, and that leaves them with 4 or 5 guys that they can put in coverage at all times. So then they feel really good about the back end, and they also do a good job stopping the run at the front end. Even though, like, if you look at it on a per gap basis, they are down a gap typically. That's why they play like a gap and a half scheme, which this is getting very technical, but a gap and a half scheme. So you have every defensive player in the front 7 is responsible for putting their shoulder or their head in a certain gap, and they're also asked to like stack and shed and move to a half a gap that they're splitting with someone else if they need to do that. So everything, basically what I'm trying to say here is everything is predicated on stopping the run, and the whole structure of the defense kind of falls apart when they can't stop the run. So that's the number one key. That's the number one key for them in every game that they play in. The number two key for me is keep Max Duggan in the pocket. He's a very athletic quarterback. He's very good at creating once he gets outside of the structure. He's a gamer. He really likes to run the ball, for first down, stuff like that. So keeping Duggan in the pocket, I think, is a big one for me. You want to make him a pocket passer in this game. It's not that he can't be a good pocket passer. He's just much better when he gets outside of the pocket. That his legs get a little bit more involved. So I think keeping him in the pocket in this one is going to be important. And then winning 50% of those 50-50 balls that TCU likes to throw is my third key. They're not going to win all of them. Quentin Johnston's too good outside. He's going to get a couple. They have another receiver, Barber, who's also pretty good. He's more of a speed-based guy, but he'll win a couple 50 balls as well. So I don't think it's reasonable to ask them to win all 50-50 balls, but I think if they can win like 50%, right? This is kind of like the moniker of the whole phrase here. If they can keep that 50%, they'll do good. And that'll be good. That'll be a win for the defense, and I think they take that. So those are my three keys. Stop the run, keep Duggan in the pocket, and win 50% of those 50-50 jump ball type situations. And really, just the way the matchup breaks, I think they only needed to be two of these keys to win the game. If they do all three, they should win and control this game fairly easily. So.
Yeah, I feel like you nailed it. I like all three of those keys there. And by the way, I like the technical talk. I feel like I'm, listening to a coach, learning something a little bit. The Ringo agrees with you about containing Duggan and keeping him in the pocket. It's almost like you guys were comparing notes heading into this one. The GFF says a tough tackling, clean possessions, explosive play calling. Those would be some of his keys. And let's take a look at some of the other ones that people are putting down. Richard says the TCU coach, that is Sonny Dykes. If they stop the run, they stop Michigan. Ronnie Bell and the rest are rubbing their hands. Oh, that's more of a comment than a key. Just like Dune E. Dunn, he is just expecting a relatively close game in both semis. He's going to predict Michigan 34, TCU 28, and also Georgia 35 and Ohio State 24. Well, you'd get a cover on one of those if we're playing the numbers. Mark says the keys are differential play, not expected. Key one, interior D-line play. Let's see. He's got another key. Key two, Michigan offensive line double teams on three-man fronts. Get to the linebacker level. And key three, no major miscues. On this one, Mark, I watched, I had Jim Scarcelli on for 3 consecutive Mondays, and he was putting tape up of TCU's game against Baylor twice. He was looking at Kansas State. And one thing, Michigan, the way that they pull their offensive linemen, almost every one of these guys, that's why they are the Joe Sharon Moore 2-time winners. These guys are athletic, they're big, they're strong, they're physical, and man, they can pull and they can get out and they can get to those linebackers. To me, that is one of the big keys, Lucas. Man, watching that, I have a hard time thinking that the TCU defense, which struggled against the run, struggled overall at defense, is going to be able to stop Michigan's offensive line when they pull and put a hat on them.
Yeah, I think the big thing there too is, like, you heard some of the TCU players and coaches this week kind of compare them stylistically to teams that they have played. Some of the teams they've mentioned, like Texas, they do things quite a bit differently, at least in terms of their offensive line. Their blocking schemes are a lot more zone-based in the way they want to run the football. And then Baylor and Kansas State are the other two that are more similar, but still quite a bit different for what Michigan likes to do. TCU has not played an offensive line nearly as good as Michigan's. And while they're undersized on the front end, like, they're fast, they're explosive, they're physical-ish to a degree, but they only have that 3-3-5 structure that they rely on very heavily. So unless they come out and do like a 3-4, 4-3 just for this game alone, yeah, I have a hard time seeing them being able to keep Michigan below like 200 rushing yards.
There you go. Let's give you some of my keys. Before I do that, I want to tell people we know Christmas was this past Sunday, but you do have those holiday get togethers still, and you may have one heading into Saturday. That's a holiday. Certainly, Sunday is as well, New Year's Day, a lot of football watching. And if you're looking like, sometimes you bring over, a bottle of wine or a box of cookies or something. How about you bring over the gift of the Maize and Blue Review for a year-long subscription? Now you're talking, especially, let's just say you're going over and a bunch of friends and you got some Michigan friends in there. This would be the greatest gift that you could give for 23. Go to michigan.rivals.com and you can get premium access starting out today. But that will be great for the Michigan fan in your life. And it may just be you're like, hey, what about me? I'm a big Michigan fan. Yeah, you should get that. You will know. For me, I come down and I put it like this. I looked at the red zone. TCU, I think, technically, if you looked at the numbers, TCU had the sixth most best scoring offense in the country. Michigan was at 7, both over 40 points. But you get down to the red zone. If Michigan could come up big in the red zone against TCU, and if you look at some of the numbers, TCU's red zone offense, it's the thing that stands out. Like Michigan's red zone offense was the 5th best in the country. TCU's 81st in the country. That jumps out to me. Now, on the defensive side, TCU was not very good in the red zone defensively, but overall they weren't very good defensively. So that kind of lines up. And Michigan's red zone defense, not as good as their overall defense, but 31st. And another thing that jumped out when I was looking at those numbers is that Georgia as the number 1 scoring defense in the country. But we have time to get to those dogs if that ends up materializing. Number 2, I'm going to go to limit big plays. And if we're talking about big plays over 20, I think that the Horned Frogs are going to be able to get some. But if Michigan can limit those to 4, I think that they'll be in business and have a good shot to win this game. They will be cooking those frog legs come Saturday night if they're able to limit those big plays by Duggan, by Johnston, and those other 2-3 wideouts they have. And my number 1 key would be, it's a pretty general one, dominate the line of scrimmage, but that gets to that offensive line. What I've seen from Michigan is that they should be able to dictate what they want to do on offense. They want to run some, they get up, they're able to score a little bit, and then they want to pound the rock. They should be able to do that. And defensively, it's amazing to me that they have been a better defense this year in almost every regard than last year. They had Hutchinson and Ajabo and Hill and, all that, but they've been better statistically. They've been fantastic at halftime adjustments. And I think that, if both of those sides of the ball up front in the trenches, if that holds true, I think Michigan will win this game. And I'll get to that prediction coming up in a little bit. What do you think of those keys, Lucas? You feel like I'm off a little bit on any of them?
No, I think you're right on track. They're not too terribly far away from mine. Even though we talked about them a little bit differently, but they're similar-ish to mine. So I agree with you. I think the explosive play thing kind of goes off of their red zone percentage as well, because they do rely on so many explosive plays that their red zone percentage is going to suffer just based on how many explosive plays they do hit. It's far less important for them to be good in the red zone because they don't have to rely on that. Whereas the opposite is kind of true for Michigan. They don't typically generate as many explosive plays. So the red zone is more important for them. So makes sense.
Mark is a lot of 3-3-5 talk and scheme talk on the chat. Mark's saying it's going to be a key difference if TCU changes up their 3-3-5. Meanwhile, Michigan man Jason says, if you're running a 3-3-5, they're going to make you pay. You put 8 in the box, and JJ's going to torch you through the air. That's the idea. Anyways, I think as we're talking about it, this could be key that Michigan's linebacker can hit Duggan harder than anyone this season. I would say that, that could be a factor if you're able to. He is somebody, when you talk about Duggan, he's not looking to slide. He's looking to lower his shoulders and, since he is the main cog, every quarterback is, but he's one that is not looking to slide down, and I don't expect him to do that Saturday either. I think he's going to be like a Jalen Hurts, that he's going to be looking to run the ball, or Josh Allen. I mean, any of these guys that you see in the NFL, and a lot of those guys have been getting hurt, so that could be a factor as well. What do you think? Okay.
Yeah, possibly.
Yep. A couple more here, and then we'll get to our bowl picks, and you can pick along with us if you want. Let's see, but more 3-3-5 talk, 3-3-5. And Mark is right that I've got the Ohio State playing on repeat in the background on the small screen. That's right. I mean, I can't get enough of it. You just keep watching it. You put it on, you look over, and you're like, all right, key 3rd and 3. Watch out, because Michigan will have Mike Sanders still down there, and he'll come up with a big play. And I can almost get it where I can call the play-by-play as I just look at the screen, which is fun. What also is fun is what we have been doing all year long here on the Maize and Blue Review, and that is making picks on Fridays. And Lucas is doing a good job. As I was looking over the picks so far, we picked all the bowl games up to last night. Last night was a doozy. If I would have, Arkansas could have won that, could have, should have in that game, and yet I liked Ole Miss as one of my best picks. I was doing pretty well, and then last night I really stubbed my toe. Lucas, how have you been doing in picking the bowls?
Yeah, 10-8 so far on like official recommended picks or whatever. So not setting the world on fire, but over 500. So I'll take that every time. Hopefully, as these games, these ones in the second half are a little bit more exciting teams, I guess. So hopefully look to do a little bit better than that. But I will take anything over 500. So especially with bowl games, they're hard to predict.
Yes, they are. I was talking to one of my friends. I was going to say he does. He considers himself a sharp, and I consider him just somebody that bets a lot. But I was telling him, like, oh, it's so difficult picking the games, and and he was like, no, this is where if you're sharp, you come in and you make it. When you hear everybody complaining, he was saying, I just laugh, because this is when you get to know the information. This is when you know who's out. This is when you know about the backups. This is where you make the money. And I was like, all right. And then I asked him what his picks were, and he was like, I'm one game over 500. Okay, that's pretty close from where you're at. But having said all that, hey, let's make some picks. And we start out with the Bad Boy Mowers Pinstripe Bowl. That's getting ready to take place at the top of the hour at Yankee Stadium. Maybe, they'll have Aaron Judge coming out there to throw out the first pitch or something like that. I don't know. Looks like he could play some football. I think surprising thing about this, Lucas, is that this game has the Big Ten's Minnesota Golden Gophers favored by 10.5 over Syracuse. How do you see it?
Yeah, 10.5 is a lot of points for me. There's some uncertainty with the quarterback position for Minnesota. PJ Fleck came out and said earlier this week, Tanner Morgan is medically cleared to play, but he wouldn't specify if he was actually going to play or not. So I really have no idea what's going to happen there. And PJ typically has, he's done good with bowl games. Minnesota as a school has won 5 in a row. 3 of them, the last 3 coming under head coach PJ Fleck. So they have showed that they put in good effort to try and win these bowl games. And they love to run the ball as a team. Minnesota does, and Syracuse typically has trouble stopping the run. Just at 10.5 here, it's a little bit too much for me. 9.5 would be a fire on the Gophers for me. 10.5 is a little bit too much, but I do lean the Gophers to cover if anyone really wants to bet this game.
I do, and I'm with you. Syracuse, they were a big surprise early in the season. They started 6-0. You look at the Gophers, and if you look at the numbers, man, they got a lot of good stats, especially on defense, top 20 and SP+, but they have 0 good wins this year. But Syracuse lost both of their coordinators, and I look to when you got a star player, Minnesota's got the best player, Mo Ibrahim, as their running back. He's good for 10 points, but you got to cover 10.5. I'm going to do it with PJ Fleck. I'm going to say they're going to row the boat in Yankee Stadium, and I have them covering the game just like you. Let's get to the next game. That's going to take place 5:30 this afternoon, the Cheez-It Bowl. That is in Orlando, Camping World Stadium. two brands here, albeit, Florida State, maybe an older brand, but trying to come back. Oklahoma and Florida State. Another big number here is the Seminoles in their running game. You have to give up 10 points. Are you willing to do that?
Yeah, this one I will lay with the Seminoles. The Noles have been on an absolute roll to close the season. They won their last 5, got really hot down the stretch. Some of that was just the schedule lightening up, but still winning your last 5. They did so in impressive fashion, scoring a bunch of points as the tail end of the season there. And then Oklahoma on the other side, they had a really up and down season. They rely heavily on the health of quarterback Dylan Gabriel. Without him, they really don't have much else they can go to on offense. They're going to be missing both tackles in this game, their starting center, their best running back. And Dylan Gabriel is going to play, but there's a lot on offense that they're going to be missing. So I'm not loving that matchup. And then on the defense for Oklahoma has been terrible, abject disaster pretty much under Brent Venables' first year there in Norman. They're 99th in scoring defense. And then Florida State, it's much more of a well-rounded team. They're top 20 in scoring both sides of the ball. I think they're better on both sides of the ball on the line of scrimmage. I think we'll all kind of like the skill talent out for Oklahoma. Jordan Travis for the Noles is going to play this game. I think the Noles cover this one pretty easily, so I will lay the 10 there.
I'm with you too. Normally, you like these dogs and these big numbers, but not here. Brent Venables, one of the boosters, handed him a big NIL checkbook, but that's not going to help him for this game. It might down the line. They did a really good job in recruiting this year, but that's not helping them in this game. Plus, Florida State, they got a chance to win 10 games for the first time since 2016, and this is a home game. It's not so far. Orlando from Tallahassee. I don't think the Oklahoma fans are going to make this trip. This is a total home game. I like Florida State as well. I'll lay the 10. We're on the same page so far. Let's see as we go to the Filler Up gas station, Valero Alamo Bowl. Ooh, this one looks good. Texas versus Washington. I'm going to steal the marquee here because you got Quinn Ewers on one side, Michael Penix Jr. on the other. The quarterback matchup. The surprising part to me, this will be a home game for Texas to the short trip from Austin to San Antonio, 75 miles. But Texas favored by 3 in this one. That's a surprise to me. How do you see it?
Yeah, it was kind of a surprise to me too, almost so much so that you kind of wonder if Vegas knows something. I'm going to take Washington plus the 3, plus 3.5, whatever number you can get. I really like this Washington passing offense. They're 4th in scoring offense as a whole. Texas is 20th. So both good on offense. And then the big difference is really on defense, where Texas ranked 29th. Washington was 65th. So obviously there's difference there in terms of the defense quality. But then you start to get to the opt-outs, who's going to actually be playing in this game. And while I do think Texas is a much more well-rounded team, they're going to be without their top 2 running backs. Superstar Bijan Robinson is a really big part of that offense. Even his backup, Roshan Johnson, opting out, and he will not play in this game. And also their middle linebacker captain of the defense also opted out, not playing in this game, Demarion Overshawn. He's going to try and head to the NFL. And then Washington, Michael Penix is coming back next year for them, so he's going to play in this game. Most of their good skill players are underclassmen or juniors who aren't quite good enough to go to the NFL yet. So a lot of those guys will be back as well. So I think they'll use this full prep. It's time to start getting a head start on next year, kind of jumpstart what would be probably a more potentially Pac-12 championship type run for Washington next year in 2023, a little bit more competitive out there on the West Coast. And I just think motivationally, I think Washington is going to be way more motivated to go and beat a big brand like Texas. And I always have problems betting on Texas when they are the favorite, just because they tend to let people down. So I just don't see them being able to win by more than this 3 points here. I think Washington's got a legitimate chance to win this game outright. So I'll take them to cover the 3 there.
Yeah, I'm playing the money line in this game. I'm right with you. And the one thing I think Texas, if they can have some success early, that's going to help them, because I think there's the specter of Arch Manning weighing on Quinn Ewers. I mean, the Texas fans are already they're ready for this quarterback battle. He hasn't even stepped on campus yet. He just committed and, just signed his letter of intent, a week or so ago. But if Quinn Ewers is struggling, I could see the fans groaning and it working against him, and everybody starting to chant Arch Manning's name. I hope that doesn't happen for the young man, but since I'm picking Washington, I hope some of it happens. I like Washington outright in this game. We're picking the games. We've got 16. We've picked 3. That means we've got 13 to go, including Michigan. As we work along here, if you will look at some of your Michigan questions, and we will talk about them. And people just making points about the game. And, we don't have any problem with you doing that either. As we take a look now at, these were the games that are going to be played tomorrow or today. Let's go to tomorrow's slate. And there's some good ones to take a look at. And it starts out with a Big Ten team. And it is the Mayo Bowl, Maryland and NC State. The Wolfpack favored by 1 in this one.
Yep, I'm going to take NC State in this one. There's been a lot of live movement in this one. It started out, Maryland was like a slight favorite. It's moved all the way to an NC State. It's now the slight favorite. There's a few reasons why that I'll get to. Star quarterback Devin Leary for NC State has been out most of the year. Not going to play in this game. He is going to take his talents to Lexington, Kentucky in 2023. Going to play for the Wildcats next year. But when he's been out, they actually did a pretty admirable job on offense. They had to play 4 quarterbacks at different times this year. Still managed to get to 8-4. A lot of that is because they have a good defense. They rely on trying to run the ball, play good defense. That's how they try and win their football games. And then on the other side, Maryland is going to be without their top 3 pass catchers in this game, their top 2 receivers, their tight end, all either opting out or transferring. The tight end's actually going to Alabama. He was kind of a sneaky good player for them. So I don't really know. Like, Talia's going to play. I don't know who he's going to throw to. Maryland kind of struggles to run the ball. I think with the pass catching weapons out for Maryland, they're going to rely more on running the ball. NC State's got a good defense. They typically stuff the run pretty well. So I just see a lot of edges here for NC State. And then kind of like the cherry on top, Maryland is one of the most penalized teams in the country, and NC State is among the least penalized teams in the country. So in a bowl game like this, where motivation probably plays a big factor in who's actually going to win, this tightly contested matchup here, I'll take the more disciplined team to win and to cover. So I'll lay the points there, even though it's just the one.
Well, hard to argue with all those points, but I'm going to. The biggest one is really just I want to see Mike Locksley get dumped, Mayo dumped all over him at the end of the game, which they do for the winning coach. But, Maryland didn't beat a bowl eligible team this year. So you look at, their wide receivers, which are excellent. They're not going to have. That is huge. But they did play Michigan pretty close. And they also played Ohio State, fought with them tooth and nail. And I think Talia is going to be the best player on the field. He can make things happen with his legs as well as his arm. And, it's such a close spread here. I am going to take the Terps to win the game. So we have finally found a game that we don't agree on. And, that's okay. Tomorrow, a game that's on CBS. Most of these games are on ESPN. Not this one. CBS, 2:00 tomorrow. The Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl, Pittsburgh, and UCLA will be featured in this one. I could just say that I'm going to pick against Pittsburgh, and it's a little bit of a bias here. I find that Pat Narduzzi to be loathsome, and he's my least favorite coach in all of college football. And so that's why I'm going to just out of hand pick against Pittsburgh. What about you? You have to lay 7 points if you like UCLA.
Yeah, I would lay UCLA 7 here. In my notes, I actually had this take Pitt, but I've seen a bunch of opt-outs for Pitt that I wasn't aware of before. They actually have a really good front seven, part of why I liked Pitt. And my numbers have kind of liked Pitt all year. They've got a number of guys in that defensive front seven who are going to play in the NFL, be top 100 type picks in the NFL draft in the spring. It's kind of like a sneaky good front seven. And Narduzzi likes to play good quality defense, obviously. He doesn't really care about how many points they score. They just want to win the game, play good defense. And, they won 8 games. The ACC wasn't a great conference. It's still a pretty good year for them, considering what they have to work with on offense. But UCLA, as long as DTR and Zach Charbonnet play in this game, and it sounds like they are, they're really talented backfield duo. I'm kind of surprised that both of them are going to play because both of them have had injury issues down the stretch. But everything I've seen is that they're both going to play. So over the course of the game, I just don't see Pitt being able to keep up with all those guys that they're going to be missing on defense. I think there was a total of 7 guys on defense that either played a lot or are either transferring or opting out. So I think that's just going to be tough for them. Motivation, I think, is a bit of a factor here. With all those guys out, that you normally played with all year, like I wonder, do the other Pitt defensive players, like, do they really take that seriously? When they got Zach Charbonnet and DTR that they're trying to contain on the other side, I would take UCLA to cover here as long as those two play.
Okay, I'm with you. Let's go to some of those other games tomorrow. These are some interesting ones as we head down to Jacksonville, Florida. The Gator Bowl, Tax Slayer Gator Bowl, Notre Dame, South Carolina. Notre Dame's moved to a 3.5-point favorite. Marcus Freeman, he didn't do well in last year's bowl game. He would do well to get this one. Those Notre Dame fans turn on you quick. How do you see Notre Dame in South Carolina?
Yeah, I'm going to lay the points here with the Fighting Irish. A lot of reasons why. South Carolina's got all sorts of opt-outs, kind of like a sneaky amount of opt-outs that even though you don't really think South Carolina, you don't think pro talent necessarily, but they have a lot of opt-outs, a lot of transfers. They're going to be without their top 3 tight ends. So they're down to their 4th string tight end who's going to have to play the entire game, pretty much, their coach said. Their offensive coordinator left the same job at Nebraska, so I have questions about who's going to be calling the plays, who's running the offense, how does that look? And then Notre Dame, I just think is better in the trenches on both sides of the ball. I think they'll be able to have a decent amount of pressure on Sam Rattler all game long. With all those tight ends out for South Carolina, I think it's going to limit what they want to do offensively. I think Notre Dame will have a pretty easy time running on this South Carolina defense that hasn't been particularly good all year. So give me Notre Dame to cover the 3.5 there.
Well, speaking of tight ends, Michael Mayer, when you don't have him, that's the best player out on the field. Now, I think it is going to be Spencer Rattler. And all that stuff that you mentioned, I like. But I do think that the idea of beating Clemson and Tennessee in the last 2, that South Carolina's hot. I think this one can be a close game. And that's why I will take the Gamecocks and I will take the 3 points, although you made a lot of fabulous points there. I hate to go against you sometimes. I almost feel like maybe I should flip my pick when you're saying your selections. That's why I'm going to go first here in the Barstool Bowl, which will be played tomorrow at 4:30. The Ohio Bobcats out of the Mid-American Conference. Throw out the records when you get this intersectional matchup, Ohio versus Wyoming. But, the Bobcats turned things around from 3-9 to 9-4 this year. They got the MAC Coach of the Year. And they also have the MAC Offensive Player of the Year at quarterback. When I look at the Cowboys, they don't have a running back that has a carry going into this game. I think they've lost their top 3 backs to the transfer portal. They lost a bunch of guys to the transfer portal. The Cowboys did. That's why I like Ohio big in this game by double figures. I'll take the Bobcats in a rout over the Cowboys. How do you see it?
I'm going to go Ohio here as well. One of the main reasons why is just all the attrition that's happened for Wyoming towards the end of the season. They've got double-digit guys that are either in the portal or have already announced that they're injured or hurt or not playing in this game for whatever reason. So with that much attrition, like, something has to be going on there at Wyoming. Not exactly sure what it is, but I'm fading them every chance I get. I liked Ohio. It was like -1 yesterday. I still like it at 2.5. I don't think they have a problem covering the spread. And one of the main reasons, Wyoming likes to run the ball a lot. They play good defense typically, but they're going to be down their top 4 tailbacks in this game. So I just don't see them being able to keep up with Ohio. Probably a low-scoring game because Wyoming will still play good defense, and Ohio's not exactly a bunch of world beaters on the other side. But I do like Ohio to cover the spread, given all the opt-outs and injury issues that Wyoming is going through right now. So I'll take Ohio.
How about an over and under of 41? Wow. This is a game. You like the color orange?
A lot of orange in this one for sure.
The Orange Bowl, the Vols and the Tigers. Clemson favored by 4.5 here, but they don't have Hendon Hooker, their quarterback. It looks like their QB will be Joe Milton. So how do you see this one?
Yeah, I've had trouble with this game. My numbers still like the Volunteers a lot, even though Hendon Hooker isn't going to play. Personally, I'm not really sure how I feel about that because I've seen a lot of Joe Milton. I ragged on him a couple shows ago, but he actually looked good. Like the couple games that he played once Hooker went down. I'm not saying he's all of a sudden going to turn to a superstar and just light the world on fire, but I do think they're still good enough on offense to score a bunch of points. And then Clemson, on the other hand, they're going to be starting true freshman quarterback Cade Klubnik. He's a highly rated kid, 5-star, but he still looked like a freshman quite a bit this year when he's played. He's played some off and on when DJU has struggled. And I just don't like the scheme for offense that they run at Clemson. They have a lot of issues. It seems like they're trying to still force their quarterbacks to make NFL level throws a lot of the time, even though they don't have a current NFL level quarterback. Maybe Klubnik can be that guy in the future. I just don't think he's that guy right now. They haven't really meshed their offense well with the current personnel that they have. So a lot of those reasons, I like the Vols. I think they got a chance to win this game outright. So I'll lay the points there.
Well, if the Vols hadn't given up 63 points to South Carolina, I might feel like the same way. Klubnik, I think they're going to rally around him. And, first career start, I will lay the points. I'm not impressed with Tennessee. I know you liked a little bit about Joe Milton last time, but me, not so much. So we are on the opposite sides of Tennessee and Clemson. That gets us to some big games here. Let's look at the prelims before we get to TCU and Michigan and Georgia and Alabama. We do have two appetizers coming up on Saturday, and that includes Alabama and Kansas State in the Sugar Bowl. Alabama's laying 6.5. I know you like Kansas State all year long. Do you like them in this game against the Tide?
Unfortunately, I do not. I'm going to take the Tide here. Really, the only reason, well, not the only reason, but one of the main reasons why I like the Tide in this game to cover is that Bryce Young, Will Anderson still going to play in this game despite being probably two of the top 5 picks in the 2023 NFL draft this spring. I think that says a lot about the culture and the locker room leadership that Nick Saban's got running there. Even though they had kind of a down year for their standards, they're still going to stick with it and playing a meaningless bowl game, quote unquote. But I think that says a lot about the locker room. Jordan Battle also going to be probably a first round pick as well. Safety there, he's going to play. Even though I do like Kansas State, I think they're going to be very, very motivated to try and beat the mighty Crimson Tide after they won the Big 12. But with all those players playing for Alabama, there's just too much talent in this game for me to bet against them. So I will take the Tide to cover if it's less than a touchdown.
I agree. I don't know what they gave to Bryce Young and Will Anderson to play in this game, but whatever it is, you got to be happy if you're a Tide fan, and if you just want to watch some football at noon, getting ready for Michigan. I'm with you. There's no way I'm going to pick against the Tide in this one. Well, this could be, you like low-scoring games. This is one right here. A over and under of 31. Iowa favored by 2 in the Music City Bowl. You will not have Cade McNamara at quarterback, but maybe he'll be over on the sideline. But you won't have Will Levis either for the Wildcats. This is a tough game to pick. It's a rematch of last year's Citrus Bowl, which Kentucky won by 3, 20-17. Go ahead. Let's hear your great selection on this one.
Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting game if you like defense. I'm going to take Iowa and the Hawkeyes minus the 2 points there. Most of the reason I have sort of been fading Kentucky. My power ratings have not liked them all year. They typically want to run the ball, play good defense, but this year they do not run the ball well, hardly at all. Iowa is, I still think it's one of the top 5 defenses in the country. They're going to have an extremely hard time moving the football against the Iowa defense. I wouldn't be surprised if there's like a pick 6 or something for Iowa in this game. So I got the Hawkeyes winning 20-17, 21-17, something like that. So I'll take the Hawkeyes to cover the 2 there.
Wow, big high score. Mark thinks it's going to be a 9-5 Kentucky. I have written down 13-10, so you think it's going to be a little higher scoring. But, the way it goes, I haven't quite figured it out. I'm going to ask you, because, you want to get some things done on Saturday because you've got Michigan, and then you got Georgia and Alabama. And then after that, you might want to ring in the new year. So starting out at noon watching the games might sound like a good idea, but you're also going to be stuck for a long time watching games. So do you show up at halftime? What's your plan on Saturday? Have you thought about that yet?
No, not yet. My plans that I'll have will probably be more later, so I haven't decided fully on how that's gonna go. But yeah, I don't know. I would watch the game if I have time. So I still think Iowa Kentucky is an interesting matchup, but I like watching defense, so I think that'll be a fun game.
Okay, you like watching defense. There's nothing wrong with that. Well, will you see some defense in the Fiesta Bowl? Michigan taking on TCU, Glendale, Arizona, 4 o'clock. And we've been talking about this one for an awful long time. Tell me again now, you could put this one into words on how you see Michigan and TCU coming up on Saturday.
Yeah, so like for official betting recommendations, since I we're covering right now, I will start with the over. I talked about it a little bit earlier. I see a really hard time having TCU slow down Michigan's run game. I think they're being able to score a lot of points. I would expect them to get to low 40s is kind of what I'm thinking. They'll be able to get to hit a couple plays here and there. I think they'll get to 40 by the end of the game. And I think TCU is just too good offensively. They might not score 30, but I think they'll at least score in the mid to low 20s. So I like that over the 58 there. I think this game is played out somewhere in the 60s in terms of the total here. And I think when it comes to the spread, I just think Michigan's going to have a very similar game plan to what they did against the Buckeyes. And that potent offense, they're going to stay back, try and keep everything in front of them, force TCU to go on these 8, 9, 10 play drives, and they want to punch into the end zone. Michigan's offensive line, I think they're going to do work in this game. Not only does TCU run that 3-3-5, but they're also undersized. I just think over the course of 4 quarters, Michigan's offensive line will be able to roll through that TCU front 7. I think Michigan will stay hot here, advance to the national title game. I think they'll cover the 7.5 as well.
All right. Well, that is, I think, music to a lot of people's ears out there. Listening to you, didn't want to hear you say, "Oh, you really think you like the upset here?" So that's good that you don't. I just got a text from Jim Scarcelli. His pick is right on the 58, 34-24. He has Michigan winning the game. I've looked at this one a number of times. For a couple of days in a row, I was just sitting there at 42 for the total points for Michigan. I've come down a little bit. I think this game will be Michigan 38, TCU 29. So I'm with you. I like the over, and I will lay the 7.5. I looked back at the previous 8 years since the college football playoff expanded to 4. And so you have 16 games to look at. Only 3 of those games have been 1-score games. And 81% of the times it's been a double-digit rout. I think that makes me feel like both of these games, actually, that we're going to watch on Saturday in the semifinal have the potential to be routes. And that gets us to the nightcap, although it's the junior varsity game. Let's be honest, Ohio State backs into the college football playoff, and they take on the number 1 team in the country, the defending champs, the Georgia Bulldogs. 6.5 points. This game has gone down. I thought it was 8.5. Looks like a lot of money coming in on Ohio State at the Mercedes-Benz Dome Stadium in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yes, I'm actually going to take the Buckeyes here. I like the plus 6.5. I think this game is going to be very competitive. Back and forth type affair. A few reasons why. Number one, I want to start with Georgia, because Georgia, if they play their A game the next 2 games, they will win the national title by probably 14 points. I do think they're the better team than everybody else this year in college football. But that being said, I don't think they're as good as they were last year. I think their offense is about the same, but I don't think the defense is, it's not the number 1 defense in the last 10 years or whatever the statistics said they were last year. They're just the best defense in college football this year. So that's a little bit down from what they were last year defensively. And I think the market's kind of overcorrected on Ohio State after that Michigan game. I still have OSU as a very slight favorite if they were going to match up against Michigan again. So I still like Ohio State quite a bit. I think the offensive line for Ohio State is going to be challenged here, but I think they're well equipped to combat what Georgia does well. They have an offensive line who's good at protecting C.J. Stroud. When Stroud has time, he can pick almost any secondary apart And I think Georgia's defense, while it's very, very good, it's just not quite as good as it was last year at getting to the quarterback. They don't blitz a ton. So if they don't blitz and they can't get to the quarterback at a high level, I see C.J. Stroud, Marvin Harrison Jr., Julian Fleming, Mecca Ibuka. I think they'll be able to have a decent day through the air. That's kind of how you have to move the ball against this Georgia team as well. You have to beat them in man coverage, one-on-one, but they have the receivers who can do that. So I like the Buckeyes there to cover the 6.5. I think Ryan Day feels a lot of the pressure and will be more aggressive than he was against Georgia than he was against Michigan. There were a few times in the second half there you're kind of questioning, like, why is Ryan Day punting this ball? Like, why doesn't he go for it? And I think in this game, he'll learn that lesson. I think he'll be a little bit more aggressive on fourth down, those types of decisions. I think the Bulldogs will eventually win this game, but I wouldn't be surprised if Ohio State wins. But I like the Buckeyes to cover that 6.5. I'm thinking 38-35, Georgia.
I think the analysis is right. A lot of people looked at LSU and the amount of yards that they were able to put up on that Georgia secondary. And if they didn't have that kick, the 10-point swing where they let the ball lay there on the ground, that really did them in. You can't do that against a good team. We all know that. But to me, Georgia's calling card is their physicality. And I know they lost 5 first-round picks on defense, 3 more that were drafted. But statistically, if you look at Georgia's defense, number 1 in the country in almost every stat that you can look at. And they want to run the ball, and they're very physical. That's what Michigan was able to do against Ohio State. Ohio State's got speed and talent. I think they can be neutralized, the talent, by the Dogs. Elite quarterback and wide receivers against a real physical, tough team. I'm looking at the trend of these past 16, and the majority of them being blowouts. I'll take the Dogs to spank Ohio State and beat them by a double figure. So we're on opposite sides of that one. And I think I'm with Trevor. I'm more than double Trevor's age. He says he's 25 and he could care less about New Year's Eve. He's going to be watching football all day and looking strong. He's got the Michigan on there. Look, Trevor, here's the news for you. You can do it all. Yeah, you can start at noon. You can watch the 2 warm-up games. Obviously, Michigan beating TCU, 8 o'clock, Ohio State, Georgia. That game's going to be over, we talk 10:30, 11. Well, then you can celebrate New Year's Eve. It's not like you're going to bed at 11:15. I feel like it get to 11:15. I've been watching games all day. I might, I don't know about, running out to the club or anything like that, but I think, sitting back and, they've got all the different people playing the music. Turn some music up, get turned up with the music, and ring in the new year. That would be my suggestion for you. Although I don't think that's what turned up means, but that's what I'm going to be doing myself. All right, any final words here as we have been talking about Michigan, and tomorrow we get to just one more day left in the year 2022, and it's all climaxes with Michigan playing in the Fiesta Bowl against TCU. Your final word as you take a look at this matchup.
Well, you want to cover the last 4 games? I got all these notes written out here.
Oh, well, hey, there you go.
The post playoff games. They still count.
I'm so into the New Year's Eve and then Sunday obviously be the NFL games, but you're right. We do have 4 more games. I'm so sorry for everybody, and I'm sorry for Illinois and Mississippi State and the Relia Quest Bowl. Let's go. The Mississippi State favored by a point over Brett Bielema's Fighting Illini. You going to pick against Mississippi State here?
I am not. I'm going to take Mississippi State. Mike Leach obviously tragically passed away not too long ago. I think there's going to be a lot of motivation there for Mississippi State to go out and try and win this game for him. And then on the other side, Illinois, they lost their defensive coordinator, left to take the head coaching job. Their 2 best defensive backs declared for the draft, 1 corner, 1 safety. Devin Witherspoon's a really good player for them. At corner, I think they're going to miss him on defense. Their star running back, Chase Brown, also not going to play in this game. So for all those opt-outs, 1 injury there for Illinois. And then they also lost their defensive coordinator, who is really, really good. I think he'll do a really good job there for Purdue. I think the Bulldogs will win a close one here, like 24-21.
Yeah, if Chase Brown was in this game, might be a little bit different for me, but I think that, win it for Mike Leach. I'm right there. And I don't like Brett Bielema, so really everything points to the direction of me taking Mississippi State in this one. Forget the Big Ten there. I'm going to put Illinois in the category of like Michigan State and Ohio State. It might be good for the Big Ten, but it's not really good for me, so I'm not picking it. Let's go to what looks like you could say would be a mismatch on paper. And you see USC's favored by 2, but you got Tulane of all teams taking on USC in the Cotton Bowl. How do you break this one down? It looks like Caleb Williams, I was checking today, he had his hammy that he hurt in the Pac-12 championship game. He is being called probable right now for this game, if that affects your decision at all.
I mean, it does a little bit because part of the basis that I'm going to pick what I'm going to pick is Caleb Williams playing, sort of bake that in. My favorite over-under, the favorite total of the bowl season is the over 62 here. Tulane's really good at running the football. That's the hallmark of their offense. USC, they haven't shown much penchant for tackling on defense all season long. I don't see the motivation there for USC to be able to, like, all of a sudden, after struggling with tackling all year, they're all of a sudden going to bow up and really defend this run game for Tulane well. I just don't see that happening. Caleb Williams is just so good on offense. Even though some of his top weapons out at a wide receiver and running back aren't going to be able to play in this game because of opting out and transfers as well. But I think USC will be able to move the ball and score points regardless. So I will take the over 62 here, my favorite over bet of these bowl slates. So over 62 there.
And you know what? I'm going to work up a little bias against, the USC and UCLA are coming into the Big Ten. And I don't mind UCLA. I love the Rose Bowl. And, nobody shows up for their games and everything. But, I don't mind. It looks like UCLA. But USC, they're a bunch of dirty scoundrels. They're cheaters. And all the way through, they continue to be that way. And that was the most pathetic display of tackling in that Pac-12 championship game. I bet USC in that game. That was the most stupid bet that I've ever made. But just watching them go up playing patty cake with Utah, I'm taking Tulane. I'm taking them outright. I hope they win by double figures. So all of a sudden I'm getting mean and one-sided in selections and just going completely biased and, not really looking at the numbers. But that's what happens after you start picking games for so long. We have 2 more and another Cheez-It Bowl. At least they're sponsoring this one, the Citrus Bowl. LSU and Purdue in this one. I'm going to go first. Lucas, Purdue, if they had Charlie Jones and Aiden O'Connell and Jeff Brom, I think I would like them. Meanwhile, I don't have any of those guys, and I don't. So in that big 14.5 point line, I'll lay the points. I think LSU will kill them by 30.
Yeah, I would lean that way as well. 14.5 is just too big for me to personally bet on. My bet for this game is the under 56. Jeff Brom on his way out, like you mentioned. I think he's a really good offensive mind. He's one of the top offensive minds in the country. He's very creative. He knows what he's doing, can run an offense. And I just don't think Purdue is talented enough to overcome losing him. And LSU on the other side, I could definitely see them sleepwalking in this game, which is kind of why I don't like them to cover the 14.5. Will LSU get up to play Purdue in a bowl game? I have some serious questions about that, which is why my favorite play on this game is the under. No matter what happens, I don't think Purdue is going to be able to put up a bunch of points on LSU. I think this game will be played in the mid 20s ish, which is why I am going to take the under 56. I think it's more of a 28-10 type LSU win. So that's just a little too risky for me in terms of covering the 14.5 there. But I do really like the under. So that's one I'd recommend here.
Well, now I can get into my melodramatic type talk, and I'll get to the granddaddy of them all. And our final pick is we picked all 41 of these bowl games over the last couple of weeks. And Lucas, you got Penn State and Utah. Utah was in the Rose Bowl last year, and they lost to Ohio State. And meanwhile, Penn State, they only lost to Ohio State and Michigan. Well, they lost to Ohio State. Michigan played pretty well in all their other games here. Utah lost to Florida, Oregon, and UCLA. I really like their tight end, Kincaid, but I want you to make the selection here. You get 2.5 points if you're going with James Franklin's Nittany Lions.
I'm going to take the Nittany Lions plus that 2.5 there. I think they're going to win this game outright. My numbers have liked Penn State all year long. I think they're underrated on the national perspective. I think they're like a top 8 team. You could maybe go higher, maybe top 6 if you're being generous. I really like Penn State. I think they're good. I think they're good all the way around. They have a good defense. Their offensive line's like okay. Michigan's defensive line kind of dominated, but they didn't really get dominated by anyone else on the offensive line for Penn State there. They can run the ball. And then like over on the other side, Utah, like you mentioned, the USC game, I think Utah kind of got lucky in that game. It sounds weird saying it, but they were down 17-3 before Caleb Williams got hurt. The Utes went on a big run after that. I thought USC just pretty much quit once Caleb Williams got hurt because they knew they weren't going to win without him playing at full strength. So that was kind of my take on that game. That being said, I still do like Utah, but there are a bunch of opt-outs on both sides here. Dalton Kincaid, like you mentioned, not going to play. The top running back for Utah, Tavion Thomas, opted out, not going to play. Top cornerback, Clark Phillips, not going to play for Utah. And then Joey Porter Jr., the best cornerback for Penn State there, isn't going to play. So a lot of uncertainty in terms of who's going to step up and be those guys. Behind those NFL draft players for both sides, I trust Penn State's depth more than I trust Utah's. So for that reason, I'll take the Nittany Lions to win this game outright.
Great analysis. One thing that I can say for sure is that Rising will have his sweet little mustache and hair flying out of his helmet, but that's the quarterback for Utah. But, I don't like Penn State, and I don't like rooting for James Franklin, but this is not about rooting. It's about who I think is going to win, and I do think that Penn State will win this game outright. I'm surprised that they're getting 2.5 points. I'll gladly take it. It'll boost up the money line for me if I actually do play this one. And watch this one on January the 2nd, which is weird, but that's the way it's going to play out. I'll take Penn State. I am with you. And that does get us to now Michigan and TCU and our final thoughts. And I don't know, you're Jim Harbaugh, you're addressing your team. What do you say to him today? What do you say to him tomorrow? What do you say to him on Saturday? How do you think coach is handling it?
I think this is what you tell them. This is what you've been looking forward to all year. Like you try and keep them calm, cool, collected because this is the biggest game probably of their lives. Last year, a lot of the players were kind of mentioning, like looking back at it, they were kind of just happy to be there in the playoffs when they went down to play play Georgia in Miami. I think this year is more of a business-like approach for Michigan. They have that experience. They've been here before. They know what all the pomp and the circumstance is going to be like before. So they kind of expect that. They have a better idea of what goes into the game. And then once it starts, I just think they're the better football team. So I think it's really exciting for a lot of the players. Obviously, being here 2 years in a row, I think they're going to win this game. National title would be difficult, but you don't want to look ahead. I think they win this game. I don't think it'll be particularly close.
Yeah, I'm with you. We made our picks. We both like Michigan in a high-scoring game that will go over the total, but we'll both lay the points. And, Jim Harbaugh is good at being able – there's some things that every coach is going to be better at. Jim Harbaugh is really good at keeping his team on an even keel and ready to go in this game. I don't doubt him there, but I've looked at the talent we watch. This is the team that we watch the closest. And the one thing, I call it a vibe, that whenever I listen to McCarthy, I listen to all these news conferences and everything else, these guys have that mindset. Like they get done with one game and usually they're like, well, we'll enjoy it tonight. Then we'll get back to work. They like right after the game, they're like, we're going to enjoy this one walking up the tunnel, unless it's against Michigan State. And then we're getting right to work on the next game. I like their mentality. I've liked their approach all year long, and it's just continued. I think that kind of stuff matters. I think it'll matter coming up on Saturday. They're going to be overlooking TCU or anything else. They know the job at hand. They know the opportunity that they have, and I think everyone is going to have a fantastic New Year's Eve if you're rooting for the Maize and Blue. And then we'll deal with Georgia when, we get across that road, which will be next year.
Absolutely.
Right. All right, Lucas, it's always great talking with you. Enjoy the rest of the bowl games. Great work, and we'll talk with you in 23. There he is, Lucas Reimink. Thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow at 1 o'clock talking about the Fiesta Bowl. Final words. So long.